Hello and welcome to BQ Prime. I'm Hiral Tatia. Seems to be an interesting day of trade because the kind of gyrations that we've seen in today's session, from a low of 16,850, we've also hit a high of 1762 in terms of Nifty 50. Clearly, it seems that we are closing below the 17,000 mark, not really meeting everyone's expectation, which was that Thursday expiry. We will see a closure in that 17,100 to 17,200 kind of a range. Joining us on the show to discuss more as to what's in store, we have Kush Bohra, founder at kushbohra.com, joining in. Good afternoon, Kush, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Hiral. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, Kush, the expectation on the street was a close at around 17,100 to 17,200 kind of levels, taking Thursday expiry into consideration. But we're well below the 17,000 mark.
Well, to be honest, it's not very surprising given the kind of momentum that we've had on the downside. See, the direction in general was something that everyone agreed upon. It's only the momentum, that's actually surprised everyone on the downside. Now, given that, it's not surprising that we're closing up, just about at 17,000. Maybe we'll close, the average closing will be just below that. So it's not surprising. See, we've been expecting some kind of bounce to 17,200, 17,150 levels. I agree. But as I said, given the kind of momentum and the lack of participation that we've seen from some of the big names, this is not entirely surprising.
Right. So overall, if we close below the in fact, we are closing below the 17,000 mark. What's in store from here on?
So if I may, let me just put things in perspective. When I even before I go to what kind of next expiry we can expect. Look, if we look at a downward sloping channel that began somewhere early December, we're actually at the at the lower band of the downward sloping channel on the Nifty, and in fact on the Bank Nifty we broke that downward sloping channel, and we've then recovered from there. The RSI for Nifty and Bank Nifty both had gone into an oversold territory, and the PCR early morning today, when the day started, we were in the oversold territories. So everything was pointing towards some kind of recovery, some kind of bounce back, but that's been very short-lived. The short covering rally has been very short-lived. So while I would say a short covering is due, and 17,200 and 39,800 on the Nifty and Bank Nifty respectively are still in play, my concern is that a lot of spaces where there are positive news flows and bounce backs expected, they're not playing out. Now if that continues to be the theme, then we may see these very short-lived bouts, but markets will perhaps remain in a pressure even for the coming week or so. If I talk about Nifty in particular, we've seen a very strong build-up at the 17,000 call for the next week's expiry. Now that's where my concern is. 17,000 had a very strong put base for the next week expiry and the monthly expiry too. But if we look at the the data today that's built up, the next week's strike price of 17,000 call has a very strong call base. Now that's suggesting that perhaps the base is shifting from 17,400 to 17,200 and now perhaps to 17,000. So that's a bit of a concern.
Right. So that we are talking in terms of where Nifty goes as well, right? How are you seeing in terms of Bank Nifty from here on? Because we've still managed to maintain those 39,000 levels, which is a crucial psychological level, at least from a closing perspective today.
So, Hiral, see, I play a lot of cricket. And the reason I say that is because everyone's been after Virat Kohli's century, right? But in Virat Kohli's own words, right, century is just a number. As long as he can help the team win, that is what matters more, right? Sadly, this is playing out differently for Bank Nifty. 39,000 seems like a very crucial number. It's a more of a psychological number. But I don't think there's too much of a significance to it, at least if you look at it technically. Now, my concern is that we are below the 39,200 zone. In fact, just bang on at 39,200, which is actually the lower end of the band that I was talking about. Now, a close below this, we're holding up, which is fine. Any significant dent below this, I'm looking at levels of 38,400, 38,600 kind of zones. So while 39,000 psychologically remains a more crucial number, technically it doesn't have that kind of weightage. And something that I said for Nifty just a while ago, which is 17,000 call base adding up, we see a similar call base adding up on 39,000, which is now actually in the money call for the next week. So that remains a bit of a concern. Plus the overhang that we are having from the global side. There isn't really a very strong rhyme or reason for the Indian banks to be dealt the way they are being dealt with, right? I mean, given this problem that is there in the US and the other parts of the world, but it still has a sentimental impact. And that is what we're seeing play out. look, if you take Nasdaq or Indian, IT stocks in consideration, the structure of Nasdaq, the composition of Nasdaq companies and the Indian IT companies is very different. But every time we see Nasdaq crash, Indian IT companies do have, a sentimental rub-off effect, and we see them sliding down. Something similar is going to play out on Bank Nifty, is rather playing out on Bank Nifty. So my concern is, if the recovery doesn't happen soon, we may be seeing at significantly lower levels on the Bank Nifty as well.
Right. So that's with regards to Bank Nifty. Now, moving on, if you see in terms of stock-specific action in today's session, interesting moves coming in terms of the OMCs as well. So HPCL, BPCL are seeing smart moves on the way crude has panned out. Asian Paints last 2 to 3 consecutive sessions have been really strong for the counter. What do you make of these stocks, and what is the derivative data actually indicating?
Very interestingly, we've seen long build up on a couple of names that you already mentioned. You're right, HPCL, BPCL have been doing fabulously well. In fact, if we look at the volume action today for HPCL, it has been phenomenal, and the stock was resisting about its 200-day moving average up until yesterday. And today, as they say, it's broken those levels with a bang. So I won't be surprised if this move continues to about say 250, 260 kind of zones. But I wouldn't recommend fresh entry, in this one, at least in particular, because it's already now starting to get overstretched. One other play, which you've rightly identified, is in the paints segment. Now, Asian Paints, remember, has been has been in the downtrend for a very long time, and now is sort of recovering. So Asian Paints, if you're an investor, this is a beautiful time to add. If you're a trader, even then, because it's now broken out of its key short-term moving averages. Now, this is going to play out as a very short-term trade for you. My view, my radar, something that I have on my radar from the paint space is a stock called AkzoNobel. This has actually started moving much much better, much faster, and much before Asian Paints did. So my view would be Asian Paints, AkzoNobel, Berger Paints. These are stocks that you should have on your radar, at least in a market like this.
Right. So that's with regards to a few of the names that we're talking from the paint industry as well. Moving from there on, another interesting counter that I want to talk about is the Reliance Industries, right? Uh, the participation of Reliance Industries to see a good pullback rally is extremely crucial, taking into consideration the way the moves have been. In fact, fresh 52-week lows is what Reliance Industries has been hitting in yesterday's session as well. How are you seeing Reliance Industries? Kush, you're on mute. Yeah.
My bad. There's a reason Reliance is a bellwether, because same time around, which is early December. If I start a downward sloping channel, this will look exactly what the Nifty downward sloping channel would look like. On Nifty, we've tested the low of that range and bounced back. Sadly, we haven't done that in Reliance. And if I look at the medium term support, which was around 2300, 2280 zones, the stock did bounce back a couple of times from those zones, but sadly not now. So my concern is this downtrend, it's actually volume backed. We've seen an uptick in volumes as well. This could actually slide further. I won't be surprised if it hits about 2150 kind of zones before showing any kind of meaningful rebound. The only thing is it's moving closer to an oversold territory, so you can expect some sort of technical rebound on this one, but otherwise the trajectory actually looks quite bleak on this one.
Right. Moving from there on, in terms of, if you see in the metal counters, right? Overall there is further weakness coming in there. Tata Steel is down around 3.5%. There is good open interest built up on that counter as well. If you talk about a sale, similar kind of moves coming in, what would you make of these two counters? Kush, you're on mute again.
Hiral, quite surprisingly, I'm a little bullish on the metal space, given the kind of demand, that's going to prop up, in the country itself with the infra push and the China, reopening theme and everything. But that said, there are, these sectors which have good news inflow and haven't done well. And, metal is one of them. This is largely due to the kind of FII heavy selling that we've seen. So my idea would be to buy on dips, in the metal space. We've got positive news flow coming in. Some of the charts are actually looking very interesting, where we've got like a higher low pattern, which is suggesting that the downturn may not be so bad, in some of these names. If I talk about sale in particular, now look, 85, 84, 85, these are the zones where the stock has taken support previously, rebounded from there. So, and we're trading again very close to those levels. This actually might turn out to be a good buying opportunity. where the risk reward ratio will be extremely favorable. So keep a stop loss at 84, take a more positional bet. The first target would be 89, the second target would be about 91. Similar is the story on Tata Steel. I know we've seen quite a bit of dent on this one today as well, but perhaps the saving grace is that even this has taken support at around 103, which is its historical support zone. So even here, if you want to enter, it's a good idea. This might turn out to be slightly slower mover. It may not move as fast as it want, but definitely this is a good accumulation zone.
Right. Moving from there on, let's pick up a few of the other names which are seeing some good moves in today's session. If you see the banking names specifically, anything that catches your radar?
Well, right now I would actually look only at HDFC Bank. The kind of fall that we've seen in the other stocks is actually quite scary. If I'm looking to enter fresh or accumulate, HDFC Bank is something on my radar. It's still respectfully holding above its 200-day moving average, which is a very good sign. But if I were to play for, let's say, a short covering rally, then the other stock that I would have on my radar is Bank of Baroda. Now, this stock has seen a lot of pressure. It's trading, below its short-term averages. But any kind of meaningful bounce, if Bank Nifty has to see, Bank of Baroda has to participate. See the big three names in the PSU space: SBI, Bank of Baroda, and Canara Bank. These three have to, participate. The risk-reward ratio is looking very attractive for Bank of Baroda. My only concern being the fall hasn't really stopped. I mean, we're seeing a bit of a half a percent kind of an up move on this today, but this could also be because of the weekly expiry. So I would wait and watch for at least a day or so. Any kind of short covering bout, and Bank of Baroda would be on my radar.
Right. Apart from that, how are you looking at an Ashok Leland as well as a Tata Motors? Because there was some bit of an action in terms of yesterday's session. We were seeing some bit of a long build up on these counters. What's the sense that you pick up now?
Fairly similar to what we discussed about the metal space. There is traction, but it's not lasting. Every time these stocks have tried to move up, correct? There has been selling pressure. Now, interestingly, the demand has not hit. If you look at the auto numbers, there are some pockets where the demand has been hit, but otherwise, if you see, the demand is still there, but that's not translating into stock performance, and that's where the concern really begins. So I would suggest accumulate these stocks. They aren't really a short selling candidate just yet. So these would probably be the best. At best, they would be accumulation candidates. If you look at something like a Tata Motors, right? We've been initiating calls on this one, and quite painfully, it's not actually moved as aggressively as we would have liked. So my concern is that this will move, but it'll take some time. So if you're a patient investor, this is a good time to enter. The stock has actually come off its highs of 460 or early this year, and it's forming a base around 410 kind of zones. So this is where you'd look to enter Tata Motors. I won't be surprised to see an up move towards 430 and again 460 kind of levels in the coming months.
Right. Another interesting counter, Kush, is a Motherson Sumi. If you see both in terms of the March expiry as well as the April expiry contract, good amount of the volumes are also pretty strong, as well as the open interest addition is also pretty strong. What are you making out of this?
Well, I mean, this is perhaps the most tracked and discussed stock today, at least, right? There was a recovery that was underway, but the mood has been dampened very seriously. So I would say hold out. Don't be in a hurry to buy just because the stock is down close to 10%. This is the breakdown of the of the downtrend that began somewhere around 83 zones. So my suggestion would be hold. Let the stock form a bit of a base. Let it revive, and then we'll consider. Now this could happen around 65 zones. The stock is already entered an oversold territory, and 63 to 65 is where we saw the stock form a base some time ago and then revive. I wouldn't be surprised if it sort of hits those levels and then again turns around. But rather than preempting, I would wait for the stock to rebound and then make a fresh entry.
Right. So, Kush, apart from the stocks that we've already discussed so far, anything else that actually catches your radar from tomorrow's perspective?
Sure. One of them, from the financial services space, I know the entire pack has been, under a bit of a stress. But one stock that is actually standing out for me is actually Chola Finance. The stock has actually participated with the market in the downturn, but it's been more sideways than down. So I would suggest Chola Mandalam, traders, investors can keep on their radar. The stock is respecting its 50-day moving average for a very long time now. and this could perhaps be the support zone that the stock is looking for. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the stock moves to 760 and then 775 kind of zones. For a fresh entry, 735 is where I would place my stop loss. And once the index, once the dust settles on the financial services space, this stock would actually move higher and faster. So Cholamandalam is something that I have on my radar.
Right. And apart from that, cap goods as a sector, Kush, that has been pretty resilient in spite of the kind of fall that we've seen in the markets lately. So if you have to look at capital goods as a sector, anything that you think could be preferred bets?
Absolutely. See, in this market, if there are a few handful of pockets where we could look for cover, cap goods is definitely one of them. The other sector being auto ancillaries. So these are the two spaces. In fact, the much loved pharma and FMCG also haven't really given that kind of a support zone or safety that the capital goods and auto ancillaries have provided. Now, a lot of stocks here stand out, ABB, Siemens, Cummins, Thermax. The list is quite long and all of them have done very well. But if I have to pick just one, it would actually be Larsen and Toubro, the leader of the pack. See, it broke out pretty late, late last year. The entire pack was moving much before, but the rise has been steady and it has been consistent. And that's where the safety lies. So I would have Larsen on my radar as far as, the pick from cap goods sector goes.
Right. So I think these are few of the stocks that one should be watching out for, as well as Kush was mentioning. Thank you, Kush, so much for joining us on the show and giving us those views. But overall, as we were discussing, below 17,000 close is what we've seen in terms of Thursday expiry. We hit a low of 16,850. 16,985 is what we're looking at, though a high of 17,062, which did raise expectations as well in intraday trade that probably we would have a higher closing. But from here on, if you see in terms of stocks, BPCL, HUL, Asian Paints, Nestle, as well as Titan, these have been few of the top gainers in today's session. Whereas it's the metal pack which has been pretty weak. So Hindalco, Tata Steel, JSW Steel, these are few of the top losers. With that, you have an IndusInd Bank which is down 2.5%, as well as an HDFC Life which continues to trade under pressure. In terms of the Sensex as well, good moves. Again, that volatility has continued, and we've ended with gains of around 78 to 79 points in terms of the Sensex as well. And in terms of stock-specific action, HPCL, BPCL, these were few of the OMCs which saw good moves. The media index was up in trade as well, so a lot of media counters along with the Z Entertainment saw smart moves in today's day of trade. BEML saw good moves as well. Motherson Sumi, the top losing stock in terms of the broader markets. Electra continues the downward spiral. Chennai Petro was another one which did see some bit of cuts coming in there. But overall, an interesting day of trade. It seems to be an interesting week as well. How tomorrow pans out is something that we need to watch because clearly what's happening with Credit Suisse, that's something which is providing some bit of support to the Indian markets as well. But whether that support continues in tomorrow's session or not is what we need to wait and watch and what happens in the US markets in overnight trade. But overall, pretty flattish close is what we are seeing. No major moves coming in there, but the day has been absolutely volatile. That's all that we have on this session. Thanks for watching and have a great evening.